What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Tabletop Scholar. I'm James.
I'm Jade.
Even though you can't see her except on the, yeah, okay, there we go. Okay. So today we are going to discuss something really important. A brand new game system that just came out, Daggerheart. Everybody's been talking about it, and
I need my 15 minutes of fame. Just let me in.
so we are actually going to dive into an in-depth analysis of Daggerheart today, and I'm just going to teach you all how it's played.
Daggerheart just came out by Critical Role, which is super exciting.
Well, if you look, so Critical Role produced it, but officially it is Darrington Press. That is the company that does it.
Their publication.
Yeah. I've already seen I've flipped through the book. James has read it. I flipped through the book. It looks incredible. It looks pretty cool. Very excited. We got some printouts here. And we're going to go over, just do a little synopsis of it.
So before we begin, some things with Daggerheart. First, you don't actually need the book to be able to play it. Everything is available on their website. If you just Google it, you can find Daggerheart. You go to the website. You can actually download this. Can I hold up your copy real quick? So this right here, it says GM Guide, but that's just the first page. The next, it goes into character creation. And then it's got all of the basic rules for play. The play guide is the next page. So I'm going to go through this and teach you a little bit about this system because we are going to be using this for our next RPGallery.
Which I'm super excited about. That's all I've been able to talk about the last 2 weeks.
Well, I'm just going to dive right into it. What is Daggerheart? It's a role-playing game. And obviously, role-playing games are for what?
Role-playing.
No, they're for managing the stress of life. Yes, they're for role-playing.
A little bit of both.
Association.
A little bit of both. Flirting with your best friends.
That's where it actually starts. It talks about what is a tabletop role-playing game. It talks about the heart of the game. So really, one of the things that drives home at the very beginning is that this game is intended to be rules light. You can add or remove anything that works for you or doesn't work for you within reason, because there's certain things if you remove them, it's just going to break the game and it won't be Daggerheart anymore. They do reference quite a few TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games, that they drew influence from, as well as books, films, and television and video games, and it is by no means a comprehensive list. I have seen similarities to some other games that are not mentioned in here, which we'll go over later, but what I'm going to do right now is just discuss the game and how it's played, so that if you are new to role-playing games or if you are a seasoned veteran, you are going to be able to pick this up and just play it. So at the start of this game, it uses what they call a duality system. Everything you do, instead of rolling a d20 like in 5th edition, you're going to roll 2 d12s.
Oh, okay.
One is supposed to be lighter than the other, and that's why I have a light and a dark die. This one, the light die represents hope, and the dark die represents your fears, okay? So it is a narrative system. The focus is more on the story and less on crunchy aspects like let's just manage dice, though there are dice involved. And when you roll the dice, anytime that you want to make a move, right, in the game, when you make a move, it means you decide to do a thing. And there's no real limit to how many things you can do. You just decide on it ahead of time. The book actually recommends starting with 3 things that you could do in a turn. And that way, each player gets to take a turn in the spotlight, doing something cool. So when you roll the dice, everything you do has a difficulty threshold that ranges from as little as 8 to as high as 30. And the way that you would achieve that is by having modifiers from spells and abilities, and then your ability scores. And then you roll that die and you add it to it. So at any time you roll the same number on both dice, it is a critical hit or a critical success.
Okay.
And
it's interesting that it's just the same number and not just 12.
Well, the reason that it's not just 12 is because you could have everything go wrong and still succeed.
Right.
And that's kind of the idea behind it. So if the difficulty threshold is 8, right?
Yeah.
And with your modifiers, you roll a 7. But the hope die is higher. You failed, but you still have hope.
Okay, I like that. That's a very interesting factor. I haven't seen too much, honestly.
If you failed and the fear die is higher, you failed and bad things happen.
Okay.
You can succeed with the fear die.
Yeah.
And so you succeeded, but it still didn't go the way you planned.
Okay.
But if the hope die is higher,
So
it's exactly
would that
what you
be
want.
left up to the DM to decide the hope or the fear that happens? Is that
It is
included in the
related
story?
to your character, and
Okay.
we'll get to that in just a minute.
Awesome.
Because character creation is very different than a lot of other systems that I play. So the first thing they want you to do. Oh, the other thing I'm going to explain. There are tokens that you can use, or you can mark on your paper that you use within the game. So you will need to get some tokens of some sort, whether it's pennies and dimes or whatever. Your ability cards, some of them, as they're used, you mark the tokens on them. Also, instead of just writing it on your paper, you can use a physical token to represent hopes and fears.
Okay.
Everyone starts the game with 2 hope. And anytime that your hope die rolls higher than your fear die, you get another one. You can have a maximum of 6 at a time.
Oh, that's decent.
If you want to choose to do a cooperative action, like a tag team action is what it calls it, costs 3 hope to do that. And then you work together to pull off something fantastic.
Oh, okay. What else?
But every time the fear die is higher, the DM gets a fear token. And at any time, even if you have a crit, the DM could play that fear token and make things really bad for you.
Can they use those fear tokens on just that player that caused it, or
No.
any player?
Anytime.
Okay.
At any time, the DM can use it. So, what the player can do, so can the DM.
Yep.
So let's dive into where it starts, and it has you start with creating a character. So in this game, let me flip over to it. It actually says things you'll need to play. You need a game master, you need dice, you need tokens, you need the game cards. The game cards, if you are unable to buy them, you can actually download from the website and print them and cut them out.
That's really nice.
Nice.
It is,
I like that.
though
It
the
feels
physical,
very accessible.
it is very accessible. The physical cards are much better, though. They are high quality.
Right.
I'll show those off in just a minute
Yeah.
here. And also diving into this, it says, be a fan of your character and their journey. I really like that. They want you to build a character that you like from the beginning.
I feel like that's a big, important part of role-playing games, is the character in general.
Being
It's not just
invested
about
in
the story.
Right.
Being invested in their arc, the way that they go through the story, the way that they react to things, and connecting that back to your own person as well.
Yeah. I agree. It says make sure to spotlight your friends, address the characters, and address the players. So sometimes during play, it'll be a character addressing your character, but sometimes it's DM addressing player. And you want to have the distinction, but that's common to role-playing games. You guys play a lot with me, so you understand.
I think we get it.
You build the world together. So you decide on your campaign setting, you decide on the way things work, and it can change. There are campaign settings in the player handbook that some of them are high fantasy, some of them are almost grimdark, some of them are future tech, where
cool.
instead of magic, it's just lost technology. And it says, hold on gently. And what it means by that is you have an idea of what you want. Be willing to let situations change it. Be flexible.
Yeah. Very common in role-playing games, I find. Now that I've started playing more, that most of the time the DM has a plan, then that plan goes out the window when we see a random NPC.
But there's also the inverse as well.
Yeah.
There is. And so the thing is, like, so at this point, I've DM'd more than 5,000 hours in my life. I've reached a point where I only make loose plans. And I let the players unfold what's going to happen. And you reach a point as a DM that you just go, maybe I shouldn't write this whole thing out. I want to write out these key things that are going to happen.
Right. Yep.
But I'm going to let the players determine when they happen.
How you get to that is your
how
job.
they get there. So in their game system, you have 4 different realms in which the game can be played. the mortal realm, which is like material space, the hollows above, the circles below, and then the realms beyond, which is like weird stuff that we haven't thought of. I'm a big fan of the realms beyond, but it does include magic and spells. We'll dive into that in a minute, and how to flavor your game. But where it starts is with choosing your class. I'm going to review these real quick. In the game, you have, is it 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, you have 9 basic classes, and there are 2 subtypes to each class, a subclass. So you can be a bard, druid. Bard, you know what a bard is. Everybody knows a bard. A druid, everybody kind of gets the druid.
I love druids.
The guardian is, in my opinion, sort of the paladin of this game. The ranger is very much what you would expect from a ranger, as is the rogue. And then you have the seraph. The seraph is more of a cleric, but they can be very angelic. Like, you can actually be a winged sentinel, like a guardian angel.
That's cool.
Then you have the sorcerer, and then you have the warrior. And the warrior is kind of the fighter in a lot of the role-playing games you play. And then wizards. So each of those are divided into 2 subclasses. So for the bard, you can be a troubadour, and that focuses on music and performance, or you can be a wordsmith, which is more about talking or more about lore.
Yeah.
If you play as a druid, you can be a warden of the elements, so you focus on the elements and elemental spells, or you can be the warden of renewal, and that is actually a very strong healing class.
Interesting.
Which, that's a lot more like in the Elder Scrolls, the more druid flavored things. In Elder Scrolls Online, it's actually called a warden, and they're healers.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then in the Guardian, you have Stalwart or Vengeance. And
Vengeance sounds cool.
Vengeance actually is very reminiscent of the Paladin of Vengeance from 5th edition, where the Stalwart is, I would say, the best comparison I could make on that would be like the taunting tanks of some of your big MMOs, like City of Heroes or even EverQuest. Like they go in there and they try to draw the attention, they try to take the hits, and then they just keep pushing through, right?
So if you need a tank, someone to
it's very much
barrel their way through, sounds.
And then the ranger, you have the Beastbound, which is where you have an animal companion, and there's a special sheet in here for your animal companion. Or you have the Wayfinder, which is someone who's tracking a monster or a person or anything of that nature.
Would the animal companion have their own stats that are listed in the book?
Yes, it's all in here.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Then you have the rogue classes. They are the Nightwalker and the Syndicate. So Nightwalker is more of you use stealth and you use your environment to get around. It's not quite an assassin, though you could build an assassin out of it. It's more as this guy is super sneaky. And
I love that these are kind of like bases for what you want to do, and I think that's what the classes are. But I think that's really cool how they have those 2 options, and then it's kind of like, okay, they're both similar, but if you want to lean more towards environment or more towards people or more towards animals, it gives you ways to heavily lean places.
Well, if you want to compare these to D&D, the Nightwalker is more like the rogue thief. And the Syndicate is more like the rogue mastermind.
I see a lot of room for background stories in these, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, the backgrounds are pretty cool too. Once we're through that, we'll dive into through the classes, we'll dive into that. Next, you have the Seraph. The Seraph you can either play as a divine wielder or a winged sentinel, and they actually put those in here backwards as compared to the placement. The rest of them, like Beastbound is on the left, Wayfinder's on the right, Stalwart's on the left, Vengeance is on the right. Well, Divine Wielder is on the right, and Winged Sentinel's on the left. They're in reverse order. So when you reprint your book, that one's backwards. But
Sorry,
the Winged
Critical Role, we
Sentinel,
didn't mean that.
what it says is if you want to take flight and strike crushing blows from the sky, it kind of blends a bit of monk with a bit of cleric. Like the draconic monk almost.
I would honestly almost compare it to Paladin with like the smites, right? Paladin's kind of big thing in 5e is you have smites, and that's like where all of your damage comes from.
Yeah, I'm
would
saying
compare
like
more to that.
mechanically though, the way that it plays a lot like the flying ability of the draconic monk with the wings and all that. But then having
acrobatics.
smites
Yeah.
like you would get from a paladin. The divine wielder though is very much it's a cleric, right? Let's just be honest, it's a cleric.
What do you
But
call it? Trademark. What is your term for it?
Oh,
Legally distinct.
Legally distinct.
yeah, legally distinct. So then we go to the sorcerers. You have elemental origin or primal origin. So the elemental origin is you have raw powers of the elements that course through you. Primal origin, it's like you have a bloodline that you draw this from. The warrior, you have Call of the Brave or Call of the Slayer.
Ooh.
So Call of the Brave is more like I go in against all odds, and it's kind of a cross between a fighter and a barbarian. You know,
I can
just
see it.
in the way that it goes. Or if you compare this to an MMO, it'd be the Scrapper, right? Where the Call of the Slayer, this is all about dealing as much damage to a certain type of foe as you can.
Yeah.
So it kind of draws a little bit from the D&D Ranger, if you would. But also this one would be really good as like a ranged support class as
Yeah.
well.
The Call of the Brave sounds kind of feral, and I like it. Sounds cool.
Well, then the last is the Wizard. You have the School of Knowledge and the School of War. The School of Knowledge is you have studied to have all of these spells and change the world around you. And the School of War, is you learn magic to destroy your enemies. And that's kind of it. Or defend against violence,
I like the
whatever.
first one better.
Of course you would. So, when we get past choosing what class you want to play, then we dive into the races. So it talks about choosing your heritage. The heritages in here are Clank, Dracona, Dwarf, Elf, Fairy, Faun, Furbolg, Fungril, Galapa, Giant, Goblin, Halfling, Human, Infernus, Katari, Orc, Ribbit, and Simia. And that sounds like a lot. It's kind of a lot.
I like
But-
it. I like the options.
If we look at what they are, so a Clank is your androids, your robots, your Warforged.
Okay.
Okay. And the Dracona are draconic ancestry like kobolds and dragonborn. The dwarves, if you don't know what a dwarf is, you've been living under a rock.
They live under rocks.
Elves, yeah, they do live under rocks.
Not all of
And
them.
if you don't know what an elf is, you might have your head in the clouds like some elves
I'll
that
just-
live in the tops of trees. Then it gets into some more interesting ones. So the faun, it describes it as being like a goat person of sorts.
Interesting.
The pictures show different types of curled horns.
Do we have
Would it be kind of like a
picture?
satyr?
Thank
yeah,
you.
so
I
like a
was
satyr,
iffy on the
except
pronunciation, but I wanted to bring that
If
up.
we have it,
they do take it. I'll you know what, I can put some on screen,
Yeah.
post editing later or something. I don't
Yes.
know.
I think that's kind of cool.
Yes. Tell me.
The easiest way would be actually direct people to the website. Go look up what you want to see on the website. There will be pictures. There's too much in here and too little time for me to go through the artwork.
Yeah, no problem.
But the faun are essentially goat people, but the furbolg are essentially cow people. Yeah, so they're like a
Being
bigger
very-
version of a faun. Like they're also like the satyr, but
A
they're
fainting goat character. Whenever she gets stressed out, she just drops.
she just dies.
She just drops.
And then the next one is fungril. So the fungril are mushroom people.
Oh, that's cool.
Galapa are turtle people. If you want
Wait,
to be a
this is so
Teenage
cool.
Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Oh, like Galapagos. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Giants. You can play a mini giant. You can't be a storm giant. You know.
Okay, this is cool. I like these.
This
These
is
are
the
cool.
equivalent of what would be the Goliath in D&D. Then your goblinoids are a little different in this. The goblins,
Excited for this one.
they seem more like a cross between traditional goblins, gnomes, and rat folk.
Okay, I like it. I
They're
want it.
like furry, they have
Yeah.
more furry ears. They're more more like animals and less like slimy things that live under the stairs.
Yeah, when I was looking at the artwork for them, they are much cuter than what I thought they would be.
Wait, really?
Yes, they're
Oh my gosh, I
so
want to
cute.
see. Oh, I have to wait. Okay, cool.
Next would be the halflings, and halflings. A lot of times when I see halflings, I'm expecting the Hobbit, but in this, it's more. It's almost more akin to the little people of American folklore than it is of like your traditional. This is a Hobbit, and so they are still merry people that are short, but their behavior and mannerisms and the way they're described in here is less like the traditional halfling that you would think of if you're used to D&D, and more like something from even Irish culture with like brownies, or the Yunwi Chunsi in Cherokee folklore. And then you can be human, of course, the one that you hate playing as.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm playing a fantasy game, why would I want to be a human?
Exactly.
I'm already a human.
I'm literally wearing silicone ears. I don't want to even be human now. Come on now. Come on now. If I could be one of those rat folk goblin things, I would.
They're goblins. All right, so the next is Infernus. And Infernus is essentially your tieflings, your
Okay.
demon or devil ancestry.
What are they called?
They call them Infernus.
Furnace. Ooh.
The next one are the Qatari. The Qatari are cat people.
I knew it.
Yes.
Cat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Had to have it.
Sorry.
And then you have orcs. The orcs are in this system are more reminiscent of the orcs from Lord of the Rings than they are orcs from traditional D&D.
Okay.
They're like almost like twisted versions of elves.
Okay.
Like that's canonically in Lord of the Rings. That's what they are.
Yep.
But
Same in the Elder Scrolls as well.
yeah. So it is more in line with a lot of other folklore and other game systems.
Yeah.
And of course, this is just a brief overview. The specifics are going to be a little bit different than the overview, but I don't have time to pour into every little detail of every class.
Something that I've noticed is that they have a lot of all their like races and stuff like that. A lot of them stem from traditional,
of course.
what you would see in role playing games, which I honestly appreciate.
Mhm.
It gives you more room for a more definitely unique character because like a turtle-based person is cool. You know,
Right.
it's something that you don't see a lot. And besides just you have elves, you have orcs, you have goblins. Play one of those. You know, we see new things here that just
They all have like racial characteristics that change the way the
exactly.
game is
I think
played.
that's cool.
There's two more. The ribbit.
That's what I was thinking of.
frog
I was
person.
like, no way.
It actually it's reminiscent of what to compare it to.
Oh.
So one of my
I feel like it's just that unique.
one of the characters I've had the most fun with was a frog person from Pathfinder.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, like that.
Had the
I forget what they're called.
There's
Ripley, I think.
Grippleys. They're similar to that, but I would say, to me, in reading through it, they feel more like a cross, borrowing again from D&D, like between a bullywug and a grum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last one is Simia, ape people.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are pretty decent. They all
I
have
can
their
see that
own.
being a good tank with that one. What's that?
Any
one
of them
class?
could be a good
Any
tank.
of them.
Any
could
of
be a
these
good
could be
tank.
good at anything.
Mhm.
So after you've figured out your ancestry, here's the other thing: is you can have mixed ancestry. You could choose two of those and take traits from either
Oh,
one,
that's cool.
right? So like if your daddy was a Simia and your mom was a fairy. Now here's the thing that I didn't get into with the fairies, because I wanted to surprise you. In this, fairies are like bugs.
Ah.
They're like
Pretty cool.
insect people.
They look
I
so
love
cool.
that.
though.
Yeah.
They look really cool.
They do.
Yeah.
They could have antenna. They have like
that's
insect
They have
wings.
butterfly wings, so how would they not bite?
That's cool. That's really neat. I like
Yeah.
I mean,
that.
just in general, fairies have butterfly
Yeah.
wings.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So moving on from there, the next thing you would choose is your community. So there are 9 different types of communities. The first would be a highborn. As a highborn, you're nobility.
Yep.
You're accustomed to privilege. If you're not nobility, you're just rich. You know. Then you have the loreborn. They come from societies that focus on arts and education. And then you have the Orderborn. That is a society that focuses on religion. You have the Ridgeborn. Those are societies that live in high mountains. Mm-hmm. The Seaborn, people that live on the sea. The Slyborn are people that live in the underbelly of big cities.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. The Underborn are born underground.
Oh.
The Wanderborn are nomadic. And then the Wildborn live in forests and trees and small communities.
Yep.
And so each of those comes with various bonuses and traits and questions that you would ask to help develop your character. And yeah. So as far as languages, they just assume everybody speaks a common language, right?
Okay.
And then you can have specific languages if you want. You can develop that, but they assume that everybody understands to some degree hand sign and enough of a common language to communicate with each other.
And then each of the species have their own language, I assume?
Yeah, if you want them to.
Yeah, it sounds like otherwise, like you might have your own dialect, but
Is it DM or GM? Game Master, Dungeon Master?
They refer to it as GM,
GM,
and at
okay.
other times storyteller, and I'm going to say it doesn't really matter.
Okay, yeah, just
Everybody
curious.
knows what you mean.
Yeah.
So in this, then the next step, they would have you assign character traits. The character traits are a little bit different, and I see where they have similarities to some other role-playing systems. So the first characteristic is, and with the characteristics, they include some actions that you could take that when you hear it, like you think, oh, this is what it's like. These are the kind of moves that I can make with this particular attribute.
Is it specified to combat?
No.
Okay.
So you have under agility, sprint, leap, or maneuver. You know, you want to go jumping from toadstool to toadstool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's going to be an agility roll.
Okay.
The next is strength, and they say lift, smash, grapple.
Okay.
So if you want to grab Jade and choke her, not really your character,
Okay.
then
Sure.
you would use strength.
Sure.
The next would be
I want to roll a fear die.
well, no, that's down under presence. We'll get to that in a minute. So finesse would be control, hide, or tinker. So control is like you're using, you're driving a cart, or you are you're manipulating an object. You could be repairing something. You could be hiding.
Yeah,
behind.
kind of like manual dexterity.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I see that.
The next then is instinct, which some of the other game systems use this as well, but perception, so to perceive, to sense something, to navigate, that's your instinct. So like you want to figure out whether you can track somebody or something of that nature, or you want to say, do I smell this thing? Do I hear this thing? Do I sense this thing? That's all under instinct. Then presence is charm, perform, deceive, but also the opposite side of the coin for that. It's your resistance to charm, your resistance to performing, your resistance to deception. And then knowledge, to recall, analyze, or comprehend. So knowledge is adjacent to instinct, but that's your memory, your ability to investigate, your general understanding of a particular thing.
Okay.
And when you create your character, you're essentially going to put a modifier into each of these stats. And that's your score for it. So for one of them, you get a +2. For two of them, you get a +1. For two of them, it's 0. And for one of them, it's -1. And then that's modified by your class and your race and other things that might happen in the game.
So
That's
doing any of these checks would result in rolling a
Both
hope die and a fear die.
All right,
Then-
so let's say you are resisting the fear that you're going to get choked. So go ahead and roll the 2d12s, and the threshold is 10. You have a +2. All right, so you have a 12 with +2, so
On the
it
hope
is
die.
14. You have hope. You're not afraid of getting choked because you know I would never hurt you.
You trust
See what I
us.
mean?
See, so basically, you rolled a 21 total, right?
Yeah.
21
Yes.
plus 2 is 23, so you have a 23 total.
Wait, you
Yeah.
add them?
Yes, you add both.
You add them together and then
So you add both of them together,
Okay,
and then the higher one is whether it's with hope or with fear.
Right.
I didn't
Okay,
And that's
so
why
the
when-
consequence of it is hope because I rolled higher on my hope die.
You roll higher on the hope die, so it is you succeeded with
Yes.
hope.
So I do my action.
You do your
no matter
action.
what.
Yes.
And then there's a consequence from that, which can either be hope or fear.
Correct.
And that's why I said, but with that 12 on the hope die, you had 7 on the fear die. So your hope is higher.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was a low threshold. Even with just one die, you'd already passed it.
Yeah.
So
Jen didn't
Now let's
fail
say she
well.
hadn't passed it, but she had advantage.
advantage is a little bit different. There are things in the game that give advantage. In some role-playing games, when you have advantage, you roll your die twice and take the
Higher
better
number,
result. In this one, you are going to add a d6 to the roll.
Interesting. Okay, so say
That's why I have
advantage.
those. So
Do I
disadvantage,
roll?
they recommend you use a low die, and advantage or a dark die and a light die.
Yep.
That's disadvantage. The black one's disadvantage.
Okay, so this is
Yeah.
so
Yep.
hope
So
die
roll
would
it.
be advantage.
Well, you don't automatically get it. Let's say you spend a resource to get that advantage. So now your total is actually 22,
Okay,
and you have hope. You would get a
Nice.
hope token.
cool. All right, and what can I use those hope tokens for? Rerolls?
Lots of
I
stuff.
think had a modifier
Lots of stuff.
too.
Okay.
Yeah, +2.
Yep.
So
Look on the paper that you were handed. It tells you.
it tells you the things that you get it for. So if you spend a hope die, you
Cool.
could get an advantage for it, right? I could spend a fear die to make you roll disadvantage.
Oh, they can spend hope to help an ally utilize an experience, initiate a tag team roll, or activate a hope feature.
Yes.
And then with fear, it's enter the players to make a move, make an additional GM move, spotlight an additional adversary during battle, use an adversary's fear feature, use an environment's fear feature, and add an adversary's experience to a roll.
Yes.
That's cool.
So with your background, you have experiences. And those experiences are things that you can call on in the game. Like, oh, I survived a house fire. So everything's burning down around me? No, I'm going to make it out of this.
Yeah. It's kind of. So you remember when we were doing, what was it? That first one where we had the D100 and we would roll to see the chaos table to see what would happen?
Yes.
It's kind of like, okay, you may have succeeded, but you did roll a 14, so we have to have a consequence to add to that. I think
Yeah.
that mechanic
It's similar to that.
Well, it's like I compared it to like one of the systems that I've played a lot of is like the Fantasy Flight Games systems that are all kind of derivative of each
Yeah.
other, where it's dice are not numeric, so it's just kind of success, fail, good thing, bad thing. So it's like, yeah, you could succeed, but like it was kind of sloppy. So you succeeded, but like not very well, or
Yeah.
you succeeded really, really well, or you failed, but you failed kind of
Failed
okay. So it's
successfully.
like whatever.
Well, every class has something called evasion, and that is essentially like your armor class from D&D.
Okay, I see it.
So this is a little bit different mechanic that some people might find harder to pick up. The way that the getting hit works, you have an evasion score that is based on your class. And whenever the dice are rolled, an opponent has to beat your evasion score in order to hit you. But then your armor is different from that. Your armor has 2 numbers for any kind of armor that you have, right? So if you get hit, you got hit.
Yeah.
You're going to take a point of damage for it. But when they roll the damage dice, if they pass the lower number as a threshold, then you take 2 points of damage. And if they pass the higher number, you take a 3rd point of damage.
I'm seeing it.
And if they roll maximum, it's an optional rule to take 4 points of damage.
Okay.
So you have a lot less hit points to work with, but you only lose them
What are
in
your
smaller amounts.
hit points based on?
That you get that from your class as well.
Okay.
So let's say you have 10 hit points, right? And you have an armor that is a 7/11. That means if I rolled on evasion and I beat your evasion, so I hit you, you're gonna take a point of damage.
Yeah.
But if I roll the damage and I roll an 8, you're taking 2 hit points.
Okay.
And if I rolled a 16, you're taking 3.
Reminds me of kind of like Warhammer, where it's like, okay, I'm looking for this number.
Similarly, yes.
It's a little loosely similar to
Yeah.
the math that you kind of do to figure out, okay, I hit, how much did I hit? Okay, how much damage did that actually do?
Well, as you level up, you start as a foundation of your class, and then you become an expert, and then you become a master.
Okay.
And your proficiency bonus increases, and the number of damage dice that you roll is based on your proficiency. And if let's say you roll a d8 to attack, but if your proficiency is 2, you're rolling 2d8. And if it's 3, you're rolling 3d8, which increases your odds of overcoming the damage threshold of someone's armor. Armor can be damaged and lost, and then you'd have to replace it. There's mechanics in here for all of that, but the armor you get, you basically just choose it at the beginning.
Yep.
Just like you choose your weapons, and there's a list of things that you can choose from with each class. So that the evasion, and then it goes into the armor, you lose hit points, and there's another mechanic that is very similar to Star Wars, stress.
Yes.
In Star Wars, they call it strain,
Yep.
but basically you have a certain number of stress, which is determined by your class, and every time that you your health is depleted, then it goes into stress, and you start depleting your stress, and when it reaches the end, you're gonna die.
Okay.
There are also things that could happen to you, like, let's say you tried to lift something really heavy and you succeeded, but your black die was higher. You might take a point of stress for it.
I know there's also some spells that make you gain stress for using them.
Just using the spell, especially like dark magic, can cause you stress.
Okay, so spell-heavy
Fun
characters
thematics.
like wizards and such should be a lot more conscious of it.
Yeah.
Say like a fighter-based character.
Well, it's like kind of like one of my comparisons is like in Dragonlance. You have Raistlin, and he's like this really powerful spellcaster, but his whole thing is that he's very frail. So when he casts spells, it taxes his body.
Yeah, or like Heat from what was it, BattleTech? You know how you have
Everything
I
generates
was in a
heat.
Warhammer where I had really powerful guns, but I generated so much more heat than the average, locust or something like that. So I was a tank, but I had to watch how much I spent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at level 1, your proficiency is 1.
Yeah.
And so you're only rolling 1 damage die when you attack. And then that's just going to go up from there. The armor is chosen as you start, and there's different effects for armor. We'll get into that in a minute. Everybody starts with a torch, 50 feet of rope, your basic supplies of a tent, bedroll, tinderbox, rations. Gold is not measured in individual units, it's measured in handfuls.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
You start with a handful
Gold, is that
of gold.
plentiful?
I think that they're looking at it from like there isn't a single fiat currency. Everybody just takes what there is.
So if I
It's
wanted to
handful
buy a
of gold.
sword, they would say like 2 handfuls?
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
well, think of it like if, say, you're in one place and they have one type of currency, right? It's a handful of their currency.
Mhm.
Well, let's say you go to another country, another community, where their standard is different. They have a different currency. Well, now
Smaller coin, same volume?
yeah, like
They're both made of gold. Okay, yeah, I'll take a handful of it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay.
You know? And then you also start with either a minor health potion, which is a D4 hit points, or a minor stamina potion, which is a D4 stress. And then you don't get both, just one or the other. And then you get to also choose either the and either option on your character guide. There are class-specific options that you can choose, one or another of 2 different things. And then you might be asked to choose what you use to carry your spells, like it's a casting focus or a pouch,
Yep.
And then your background is a little different. Your background, you're going to answer questions about the character, and that's how you're going to build it, by answering those questions. And then you create your experience. So everybody starts with 2 experiences. So 2 things have happened to you in your life that have kind of shaped who you are that you can draw on. Anytime a context-sensitive thing happens in the game,
So that really tragic backstory you want to write to absolutely traumatize your characters, you can do it.
you can. And when
You can
you
do it
encounter a
twice.
situation that is pertinent to one of your experiences, you can add +2 to the roll.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
yeah.
So it could be from your background, it could be a characteristic of your character, some sort of specialty that you've developed, a skill or a catchphrase, like "catch me if you can." Anybody like challenges you to a chase. Oh, I'm going to get +2 to run from this guy, right?
Free side quest.
Yeah. Now, as you level, you can change your experiences. Or if they don't really fit the way your character is growing, you can rework an experience to change how it functions.
Yeah.
And then every character also has 2 domains. And what that means is your background, the essence of who you are, is rooted in 2 things, right? And that's what shapes every character. You get starting skills or spells. It will either be an ability, a spell, or a grimoire, which a grimoire is just a book, which is kind of a combination of a bunch of spells. And you're going to get 2 of them, and you get to use those all the time whenever you want. And what it costs you is actually written on that card. And I'll show you the cards in a minute. Every class shares its domains with at least one other class. So as you're building characters, it might be better. You could, but it's better to have people that aren't overlapping because then you cover
Spread
all
out
your
more
bases.
skills, certain situations.
Yes. And then the last thing that you build is your connections, and this is where you decide what organizations you're a part of, maybe your family, your friends, and then how your characters relate to one another. You could do a session 0 to build that. Like your characters didn't know each other. Well, in session 0, things happen, and now you're in this together, right? It does give a sample character sheet after that. The character sheet is pretty simple to follow. If you flip through there, it should show you
I
the
didn't
sample
see one. I tried
character
looking
sheet.
for one. I didn't see one.
Right here.
Yeah, it's in there, right there.
I'm blind.
And that's a
There's a few
character sheet.
pages. There's a few pages.
Well, that's the community and all that.
That's
So
actually
you can
like
take
the
notes about everything. These right here you can see are the domains,
Cool.
and this is a chart of all of
That's
the
cool.
domains in a circle.
Yep.
That's really neat.
Oh, those are amazing.
Yep.
And then as you look at your domain cards, we'll show you the cards in a moment, but there are markers on them that show the level. The upper left-hand corner is the level. There's a marker just below the level that says the specific domain. There's a symbol. And then in the upper right-hand corner, recalling this thing has a cost. It could be 0.
Yep.
But there's a little lightning bolt, and that is your cost. And then you have the type, which is going to be a spell, an ability, or a grimoire. And then you have the feature, and it tells you how to use it.
Yep.
And we'll show you those in a moment. Under your classes, I really like how it gets into all this. You're first going to look at your domain, your starting evasion. Every class has its own. Your starting hit points. Each class has its own amount of starting hit points. Class items. Every class has unique sets of starter items. Your class features are all unique by class. Your class also has a hope feature that you can spend 3 hope to activate at any time. And then your subclass will additionally grant a spellcasting trait. If you're a spellcaster, then you're going to use that ability when you make your spell attacks. Then you have a foundation feature, which is a unique starting feature to your class that says unique things that you can do. Then you have a specialization feature, which is the more advanced feature that you gain when you level up. Remember I said you start with the foundation, and then your expertise is called specialization and then mastery. So then eventually you can level up to the mastery feature.
Cool.
But you don't start with that.
I don't know. I do. I don't know about you guys.
It dives into the classes in the book, and you can find all of those yourself if you want to just hop in there. It goes in.
That's cool.
These are the beast form options, which are by tier of play.
Yep.
Tier 1, 2, 3, and 4.
The art is really, really neat, honestly.
Yeah, it is. And then
Jade's over here
the
teasing our
Ranger
viewers.
Companion, it actually talks about how you can build your companion, their name, their evasion, their experience. Yeah, they have their own sheet. And then the Rogue, Seraph, Sorcerer,
You really think I needed all the cards? The heck?
Be teased. Be very teased.
the Wizard.
You guys are gonna love
And then
this.
it dives into
can't
the
have it right now,
ancestry where it goes through all of the classes
Oh,
we talked
that's
about
cool.
earlier. Yeah, that's the Clank. Clank, Dracona, Dwarf, elf, fairy. See how it looks like a bug?
Oh, that's neat. I like that.
Don't they look cool?
I think they do. Then you got the fawn, the furbolg, the fungrel,
You're
the
going too
galapa, the giant, the goblin. I only
Wait, I
have
want to see
so
the
much
goblin. I want to see the
time.
goblin.
See how they're kind of furry? Look.
So cute.
If you want to pause and look at those right
That
here,
is so cute. I want one.
exactly as
Look at his
described, are they
ears.
not? Yeah.
You definitely underplayed their ears.
Well, you ignore disadvantage. If you are a goblin, you ignore disadvantage on agility rolls. That's what sure-footed means. And then you have danger sense, which once per rest, you can mark a stress. You take 1 point of stress to force an adversary to re-roll an attack against you or an ally that is within very close range.
They're so cute. I really love the designs are all like.
We go to halflings though. Their ancestry feature Luckbringer. At the start of each session, everyone in your party gains a hope. So your whole party would start with 3 instead of 2.
Oh, that's cool.
And then internal compass, when you roll a 1 on your hope die, you can re-roll it. Yeah,
I love
they're lucky. Which,
I love the like little sketches and then like the full art with the color and all that. But I love like the sketches showing different types
Yeah.
as well because like different colors and different features, and you can have like the different kinds of horns that you have here. It's very, very cool. Very customizable characters.
in Furnace and Katari, orc. So an example on orcs, when you have 1 hit point remaining, attacks against you have disadvantage.
He's a very distinguished
nice.
gentleman.
Yeah, they're just hard to kill. And then they have tusks. When you attack opponent in melee range, you can spend a hope to gore the target with your tusks
That's
while
so
you're fighting them.
cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
Look at
it's the rivets. Yeah,
Yeah, they're frogs.
If you look at them,
Poison dart from
well, like here it looks like a bullywug, and over here it looks like a grung, and the way that they're built is kind of between the two.
Look at his tongue.
Yeah.
He's so happy. He's happy.
You can also breathe underwater, which is weird because frogs can't actually breathe underwater, but these ones can.
These ones can.
Yeah. That's
Then-
fantasy.
Go with it, yeah.
Simia. And then the last is mixed ancestry.
Oh,
You
that's
can
weird.
determine the ancestry combination by picking 2, and then you can choose the features from either one, but you
Master
don't get
Oogway.
both. Yeah. And then we dive into community. I briefly touched on those already, but each of them has a feature. Like the Highborn, you have advantage on rolls to consort with nobles, to negotiate prices, or to leverage your reputation to get what you want from people.
Oh, that's cool.
Or
It's like, think,
Your background plays a
think
very
Malfoy, where he's like, "Do you even know my father?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. I love how the backgrounds play like a very specific part in like your actions and stuff like that. Like it actually gives you things that you can do and advantages on certain things, and
The
not just
Underborn.
part of your background.
Born in caves, they have low light living. When you're in an area with low light or heavy shadows, you have advantage on rolls to hide, investigate, or perceive details in that area. So
That's really neat.
dungeon delves become something else entirely.
It's not just your class; it is part of your background of like,
Yes.
here's where I grew up, so here's what I can do. That's very cool.
They also have a section in here about playing disability with purpose and respect. And you can play as characters that are blind and deaf and otherwise disabled. They have mobility aids, prosthetics, and accessibility tools. They're actually combat wheelchairs.
That's cool.
And then it actually describes, playing a blind or visually impaired character, playing as a deaf character, and that's the gist of character creation. Then when you want to dive into the flow of the game, there is a page on the very front, this GM guide. That's sort of the rules light for how to run it.
Yep.
But it's basically broken into 5 steps. Excuse me. So the GM will narrate the details. The players and the GM will then ask questions, and then the players and GM answer those questions, and then you choose and resolve your actions and repeat. The core mechanics, it talks about making sure everybody gets time in the spotlight. We talk about how to move during combat. It's all
A
very
lot of etiquette and
standard.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, moving during combat it's pretty standard. You move as a move is an action or that a character takes to advance the story. So moving and making a move are 2 different things.
Yes.
Making a move is this is the thing I want to do, where moving is I move, right?
Yes.
Moving is just kind of like assumed. this is where
it
you're
looks-
going and what you're doing.
It looks like moving is kind of like sort of like in the Fantasy Flight stuff where it's range bands instead of like being a distinct like you're 5 feet from this guy. It's more of a you're close, you're
very close.
whatever.
You're kind of far.
Within arm's reach, you're
Yes.
within
Correct.
very abstract.
range.
So, as you get into it, it talks about the duality dice, how to use hope, how to use fear, how to use evasion, and then marking hit points. It will show minor damage, major damage, and severe damage. Minor damage is you got hit, it didn't pass your armor, so you take 1 hit point of damage.
Shake it off.
The major damage is it passed the lower threshold of your armor, and you're going to take 2 hit points of damage. And then severe damage is it passed the absolute threshold of your armor, and you take 3.
Walk it off.
Yeah. And then there is in here talking about how to incorporate, if you want, as an optional rule, to mark 4 hit points for massive damage. So if it like doubled the effect or efficacy of your armor, that's massive damage. You'd take 4 for that. Does that make sense? So the thing with stress is if your stress is depleted, you become something called vulnerable. When you're vulnerable, you are more susceptible to everything.
Okay.
And so it talks then about marking stress. You can get stress from adversaries, stress from complications that occur in a story, stress from moves that you make or that other players
Would
make.
it impact? So say I do. Does it have acrobatics check or something like that?
So it's very abstract, right? So it's kind of you would determine what trait corresponds with that, and then if you have like an experience in your background or something that deals with that, you might be able to add that as well, and maybe
Yeah.
give a +2
I
or
was just saying,
+1, you can
yeah,
get
if it
+3.
affected, like, so say I have high stress and I wanted to do, if I wanted to charm someone with the character trait presence, would it impact that?
So it could if you failed.
Okay.
But if you were going to try to charm someone, you would say, hey, I want to charm somebody, I want to make a presence roll.
Presence roll.
And then if you have experience of, like, I used to perform on stage.
Yeah.
So you're going to get your experience added to that as well. So you would take, let's say you have a presence of +2 because you're a bard,
Yeah.
right? You would take your +2 from that. You would take the bonuses from being a bard, and you would take your +2 from your experience. And that way you'd add all 6 points to your roll, right?
Okay.
And that's just basically how it works. You pick the trait, you add any extra dice and modifiers, and then you make the roll.
Yep. And
You
then,
have to declare any bonuses before you roll.
Yes.
Yep.
So it looks like on here you spend a hope to gain the experience. So it'd be like you get your trait, and then let's say you want to be like really good at it, and you have something in your background that gives you a +2 for experience. And you can go, actually, I'm going to spend a hope as well to get this +2 to make it a +4.
Yep.
Yeah.
In that example. But it's just kind of like it's very abstract. It's less that there's skills, it's more that you just kind of like, what is the best trait to go along with this?
It focuses on storytelling over
As
rules lawyer.
As someone who loves role-playing games are my favorite of all, like, war games, stuff like that. So, and I am not as big on crunchy rules and stuff like that. I'm very much more into the storytelling aspect. So I love how free this sounds, very loose. There's so much room for customization, especially within your characters, that honestly is just next level, that I'm extremely excited about. I feel like I'm going to spend a lot of time going into my character and stuff like that. It sounds very exciting.
In my opinion, I would say the customization options are average. They're very much on par with what I would expect from a well-made role-playing game system.
Yeah.
But having played with 4 dozen different systems,
Yeah. Well, take it from me, who's new to role-playing games such like that, because I am new here. I have played probably 4 or 5. Everything that I've played besides Dungeons & Dragons has been on stream. You guys have seen that.
Yeah.
Seen how I play, seen how I am very, we'll go with out there.
I just don't want to give somebody
Right.
a false impression. This is very much par for the course with the amount of depth that you should get from this kind of game.
Well, yeah, I would kind of put it in an in-between of 5e and Pathfinder, right? Where 5e is like you have your character and it's not very customizable for the most part outside of feats. You pick your subclass, and that is your character, right? An assassin is an assassin is an assassin. Whereas you have Pathfinder, and Pathfinder's like, all right, you are a druid. All right, druid has these 10 things that you can pick from, and then your ancestry has these 5 things that you can pick from. So I kind of put Daggerheart kind of in between there, where you have your domains, you get to pick from 2 different domains depending on your class.
Not nearly as crunchy
Yes,
as Pathfinder.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at, right? It's not near as crunchy. It's not quite as much just raw. Like this is a lot of information, but it's got more customizability than say 5e does, where it's like, okay, you're an assassin rogue. That's it, right?
I
You get this feature at level 3 and this feature at level 5.
I like how much your background actually matters because
Yes.
a lot of the time, it's fun to make a background. It's not always necessary, but it's fun to make a background. But it actually has a lot of elements to where, okay, say you were a bard, you used to go to the circus, you can use the skills that you learned there that
Yes.
are in the book to be able to use that to your advantage, like mechanically.
Well, before we dive any farther into an assessment, let's get through the rest of the rules set.
Right.
So the next thing is resolving your situations. If you succeeded but you have hope, then you pulled it off well and you got what you wanted and you gain a hope. If you had a critical success, you got what you want and a little extra and you gain a hope die and you clear a point of stress. If it was an attack roll, you can also deal extra damage. And then on success with fear, you got what you want, but it came at a cost or had consequences. And on a failure with hope, things did not go according to plan. You didn't get what you wanted and there are consequences, but you gained hope. And on a failure with fear, things went very badly. You did not get what you wanted. You had a major consequence or complication because of it. So it can be very bad.
Yep.
And then as you go on, it actually explains how to use that. The whole section about story is consequence. Everything has an outcome. One of the things this kind of punishes murder hoboism, which is nice. Because if all you're wanting to do is just go in and murder,
You're going to roll that fear die a whole bunch of times.
you're gonna wind up getting killed. Like I like systems that account for that.
As someone
Well,
who
yeah,
might be a
it's-
murder hobo,
It kind of goes into that focus on role playing, whereas with murder hoboing, it's more of a focus on combat, right?
Yeah.
So in a game like this, it focuses more on role playing.
I prefer role playing too.
Yeah, I agree. I do too.
It helps build a better story too, because then you have connections to people that you have encountered. People, matter a bit more. You can't just kill them; you need them. Things like that.
So with group roles, if everybody's doing something together, like everybody's trying to hide together, everybody's trying to set up camp, you nominate one person to make the role, and then everyone describes what they're doing.
Okay.
And the action leader makes the action roll as usual, but then the GM decides the best fit for what happens, and everybody can use different traits for their reaction rolls if they wish.
There's a lot of room for the DM to wiggle stuff around, especially when it comes to okay, you failed. Now the DM gets to decide what just happened. I think that's pretty cool.
Tag team roles, you have to spend 3 hope, but then you both do something that relies on the other, and you both roll for it. One of you could do really well, and the other fail horribly. It just really depends.
Yeah.
But you have to take into account the way that it helps. Then it talks about the damage modifier or damage rolls, reaction rolls. So some things are reactions, and they're a response to, as it says, an attack or a hazard, and this is representing your effort to avoid or withstand the effect of it. Basically, we call for, like say something's happening, and then you want to make a reaction. You tell which trait you want to use, and you roll your duality dice. So let's say somebody's trying to hit you.
Yeah.
And you want to use a reaction to try to dodge that. You could.
Yep.
But if you roll that and you fail and your fear is higher, something really bad could happen.
Yeah.
Yes. But importantly, reaction rolls, they don't generate a hope or a fear for you.
Right.
When you even if you fail with a fear, like you get that fear effect, that bad thing, but then the GM doesn't get
it
a
doesn't
fear.
get a fear.
Okay, that's
But
neat. I like that.
but in reverse, if you succeed and you have
You don't
hope
get
and you
that
get your
hope.
good
Yeah, you
thing,
don't get that
you
hope.
don't get your hope either.
It's
Yeah.
just kind of a positive
It's kind of like a
fail type
reaction.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still like the fear still applies, but I would not get a token to use against you.
Yes.
Or the hope still applies, but you don't earn a token
Yeah.
for
Okay.
it.
Yeah. I think the best way to kind of describe it is
Can I say that page again?
That is a really built elf.
Yes. But yeah, I guess like the my way to kind of look at it is that like your light dice and your darker dice is like your light dice is always good thing, your darker dice is always bad thing, and then depending on the type of roll is whether or not it's with a fear, if it's fear or not.
So the next thing in here is your conditions. You can be hidden, you could be restrained, you could be vulnerable, right? Other things that could happen, you could be blinded, you could be deafened, you could be frozen. Really, you could come up with anything that you want, but they're just temporary conditions. And special conditions are only cleared when certain requirements are met, like you have to complete a certain action or use a certain item. So it becomes very context sensitive within the role-playing mechanics, and I like that. That's nice. So your ranges in combat, you have melee, which is I can reach you with a melee weapon. Very close, your character is close to the target, about 5 to 10 feet away. You have close, which is about 10 to 30 feet away. You have far, which is about 30 to 100 feet away. You have very far, which is 100 to 300. You have out of range, which is so far you can't target them. So that's just a faster way of calculating your range to hit somebody, right? So like right now, you're in melee range. I just whack, but she's close.
You did whack me, in fact, in the beginning. I want that on camera. I want that in the beginning. Thank you.
And also what prompted that?
That wasn't my fault.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, sure.
I'm innocent.
So
Totally.
when you move during close actions, you could trigger your enemies to react.
Attack of opportunity?
Yeah, they would use their reaction if they wanted to make an attack or whatever. They wouldn't call it an attack of opportunity. Then you have cover, line of sight, and darkness. If you have full cover, you're just harder to hit. If a certain effect requires your target to be in line of sight and they're hidden, then you can't use that effect. Gold is talking about you got handfuls of gold, bags of gold, and chests full of gold. So 10 handfuls equal a bag, 10 bags is a chest.
Seems simple enough.
100 handfuls is a chest of gold. For downtime, you can do really whatever you want. You get 2 downtime moves, which you can use to recover from dangers you've faced. It's also when you can have emotional scenes with each other. You have short rests and long rests. Short rests are you can tend to your wounds and heal a D4 plus your tier. You can clear stress, which is a D4 plus your tier. You can repair your armor, a D4 plus your tier. You can prepare something, whether you're making potions or you're making a meal or you're braiding rope so that you can hang Jade's character.
We're just gonna like prepare for the day ahead.
Morbid.
Prepare for. I'm not having a day ahead.
No, your character.
Okay.
And then under a long rest, you can tend to all your wounds, clear all your stress.
Yeah, I'm gonna have one.
Repair all your armor. You can prepare whatever kind of thing you wanted to do, or you can work on a project, like a major project.
Yeah.
What are you working on, James?
Building gallows.
I
Knew it was going
But one thing that is kind of relevant, because I think this is something that I think also 5e doesn't cover very well, is that when you take a rest, the DM gains fear, right?
Yep.
And it's one of the things that 5e I think has a problem with is that when DMs
Rest
allow
doesn't have a
too much rest, it takes away a lot the challenge of the game, right?
Yeah.
When you always have access to your things, so giving that advantage to your GM and Daggerheart to be able to say, hey, here's this little bit of extra to kind of give you that little edge because these characters are getting their things back is, I think, very important.
Yeah.
Personally.
I actually
So
think
it's not
that's a
just
nice
one fear.
counterbalance.
Yeah.
It's a D4 fear.
Ooh.
And on a long rest, it's a D4 plus the number of PCs.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep. It gives, like I said, it gives you that
So
little
you
bit
get
of
a
thing.
lot of fear if we're
If I have no
long
fear
rested.
tokens, and you take a long rest,
Yep.
I can take 6 fear tokens right there.
Yep.
That's crazy.
You get at least 5.
Yeah. at
On
least
average,
five.
probably 6,
Yeah.
7. So
Well, you can't have more than 6.
Really?
Yeah, it says you
There's a
can't
cap.
have more than 6.
Yeah, they
Good.
have
Okay.
6.
I'm glad that there's a cap.
Yeah, me too.
But you refresh your features during downtime.
Just imagine saving up all these, like, you have like 30 fear tokens. It's like the BBEG, and you're just like, actually, no.
Like I already hoard
No.
resources, like healing potions, hoard. Spell slots, hoard. Like
I think having a
go
cap. Sorry.
Go ahead,
I think
go.
having a cap makes it good, so it forces you to use the resource.
Yeah, agreed. And, like, I don't want to, gain another one and not be able to actually have it, so let me spend some so I have some room to gain as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, moving into death, right? So,
My favorite.
oh, now you're
If-
excited.
whenever you mark your last hit point, you must make a death move. And you have 3 options, right? The first is Blaze of Glory. Your character embraces death and goes out in a blaze of glory. Take 1 action at the GM's discretion, which critically succeeds, and then cross through the veil of death.
That's cool.
So, like, all right, I'm dying. This is the thing I'm doing.
I want to
And,
explode.
Like farmer.
well, if you have a way to explode. Yeah, like Farmer. And
Yeah.
in our so if you watch an RPGallery, there is an episode airing this weekend where
Don't spoil it.
Farmer makes a choice. Leave it at that. So you can also avoid death. So here's the thing. Your character avoids death and faces the consequences. They temporarily drop unconscious, and then you work with the GM to describe how the situation worsens. While unconscious, you can't move, but you cannot be targeted by an attack. And you return to consciousness when another ally clears 1 or more of your marked hit points, or when the party finishes a long rest. So after you fall unconscious, you roll your hope die, and if the value is equal to or under your character's level, you gain a scar from whatever happened to you. We'll get into scars in a moment.
Sounds like Survivor's Guild could play into that.
Yeah.
Well, the last one is risk it all. You roll your duality dice, and if the hope die is higher, you stay on your feet, and you clear a number of hit points or stress equal to the value of the hope die. You divide the hope die value between the hit points and stress however you'd prefer. But if the fear die is higher, you die. But if you critically succeed, that's rolling the same number on both dice, you magically stay on your feet and clear all hit points and stress.
That's
That's
like
pretty
a,
cool.
that's like
That's
a
a
50
really
50.
cool
That's really
gamble.
cool.
It's not 50-50.
It's like
12 times 12.
Not 50 50, but
Yeah.
like two options, It's like
3.
you
3
can.
options.
you have 3 options.
Yeah, it's a chance of 3
Yeah.
results. Yeah.
Yeah. But that one's going to be rare because it's
Yeah.
1 in 144.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's what makes it so epic.
Right?
Yes.
So
When it
with
happens, it's
scars,
cool.
I like that
Yeah.
it's called Risk It All. Risk It All is a good.
it's very Jade. If you choose to avoid death, you might take a scar. If you do, cross out one of your hope slots. You cannot use this slot anymore,
I'm telling you, that's
As
Survivor's
in-
Guild.
ever again.
So your cap would then be 5.
Yes.
Wow.
The narrative impact of this scar is up to you. For example, you might now bear a physical scar,
Oh, that's
a painful memory, or a deep fear. Scars are
survivor's
permanent, but can be healed at the GM's discretion as a downtime project or a reward for a quest that's focused on healing that scar
Emotional
or
or
something
physical.
with very similar narrative weight. And that's actually the way that it describes it in the book.
Yep.
If you ever cross out your last hope slot, it's time to end your character's journey. Your character has lost all hope, and you need to work with your GM to find a fitting way for the party to say goodbye to them at the end of the session and prepare a new character.
That is so sad.
It's really
That's gonna make me
sad.
cry. It's really sad.
Just like, look, I'm going to throw all the nuts and bolts at you, and
and apparently some rope.
I will do my best to try to kill characters, and you do your best.
You're not killing them. You're just making them lose all hope. It's like Call of Cthulhu.
That's
all
death
over
of a
again.
whole different type.
Okay, so something I'm noticing with this is that this could make such a fun Dragon Prince campaign. There is a character with that type of conclusion.
Yeah.
And so many aspects of this are making me
I can see that.
That could be fun. That could be so much fun.
Some additional mechanics. You always round up because the game does not use fractions. If you ever wind up with a fraction, round up to the nearest whole number. When you roll the dice, If you have to re-roll a die for any reason, you always take the new result.
Yeah,
No exceptions.
like if it's cocked, for example.
For incoming damage, it's describing the amount of damage that you're currently receiving. So, for example, a dwarf's increased fortitude feature allows a PC to spend 3 hope to have the incoming physical damage. So this means that the GM tells the player how much damage their PC is taking from an attack, and then the player can decide to spend 3 hope to take half the damage instead. If the player wanted to do this again on an additional attack, they need another 3 hope to do that. So let's say you just took maximum damage, so you would take 4 hit points. Well, the dwarf could say, I'm going to spend 3 hope and take half damage, which would lower that to 2 hit points, which can be a big deal. And then you have simultaneous and stacking effects. So sometimes if you have 2 or more effects that it can apply to a situation, the rules don't tell you the order to apply them. So if you do that, the player that is controlling the effects, including the GM, can apply the effects in any order. For example, if one ability lets you spend a hope to retaliate after an attack, but another ability lets you gain a hope when you mark a hit point, you can decide to gain the hope first and then spend it to make the attack. Similarly, if you have multiple moves that can trigger a situation, such as 2 moves that occur after a successful attack, you can use them together and choose the order in which to activate them. So you made the attack, okay, I'm going to do both of these things, but I'm going to pick the order they happen in, because they both have the same trigger.
Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Ongoing spell effects are pretty easy to understand. They just continue to occur. Spending resources, if a rule tells you to spend a resource, you lose that resource when you spend it. So if you spend hope on an ability, you clear a hope that you've marked on your character sheet. Similarly, if a bard gives you a rally die, when you choose to spend it and add the result to your roll, that's when you lose it immediately and return it to the player. If you have an effect that states otherwise, so it says, unless an effect states otherwise, you cannot spend hope or mark stress multiple times on the same feature to increase or repeat its effects on the same roll. So, for example, you can't spend 6 hope to reduce an attack that came in by half and then by half to take a quarter. You can't do that, right?
Ignore that.
She dropped her headphone.
Ignore that.
All right, so using features after a roll. Oh, let's go back into this first, under spending resources. It does say if you have an effect like the Guardian's Hope feature that says spend 3 hope to clear 2 armor slots, for that one you can spend 6 hope to clear 4 armor slots because its effect is not applying a bonus to a roll.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Some of them let you use a feature after a roll, like Seraph's Prayer Dice or the Fairy's Wings. And in that case, the GM will declare if the roll succeeds or fails, but before the consequences unfold, that's when you can add the other dice.
Okay.
So, I failed. Better add this so that something really bad doesn't happen. Got it. Make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then at the end of a scene, like every time something happens, that's a scene. Like you're watching a movie or a scene in a book. Certain effects, bonuses, and conditions state that they last till the end of a scene. But at the GM's discretion, a scene continues until the current narrative situation has played out. So a chase scene might end when the PCs have caught their quarry, or when they've escaped pursuit. A battle scene usually ends when one side has fled, surrendered, or been entirely defeated. If there's an uncertainty about when a scene is considered to be over, throw it to the table and see what the players think makes sense. So you don't have to stick around and do something if everybody's bored. You can just resolve it and move on.
I like that.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense to just keep hitting this creature that can't hurt you and roll dice for the next 15 turns because it has that many health.
Yeah.
No, just move on. You beat it.
Yeah.
Right. And then it gets into best player practices, which is player best practices. Embrace danger, use your resources, tell a story, and discover who your character is.
A bit more
It's
of
pretty
that etiquette,
straightforward.
yeah.
Well, this is not just etiquette. Embrace danger. You are an adventurer. You've been around. You've got some power. Use it. Don't cower.
Yeah.
Get in there. Get it done.
I like that quite
Stop
a bit.
hoarding health potions.
You've got use your resources. You don't need 15 health. You can't even carry 15 health potions, right? You got to have room to carry stuff.
Yeah.
Tell the story. That's the important part. This is collaborative storytelling. That right there is role-playing games 101. Storytelling, collaborative storytelling is the very core of all role-playing games.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then discover your character. You really want to learn who they are, even before you play. That's the importance of a session 0. There's a section about leveling up. So leveling up, tier 1 is just level 1. Tier 2 is levels 2 through 4. Tier 3 is 5 through 7. And tier 4 is levels 8 through 10. And it's milestone leveling up. But at level 2, you gain an additional experience. You add it to your character sheet. So something else cool that happened, but it needs to be something that actually happened in the game. This thing is going to affect you from now on, and you're going to get a bonus from that. You also gain a permanent +1 bonus to your proficiency. At level 5, you gain a 4th experience with a modifier +2 again. You get another permanent +1 to your proficiency, and you clear any marks on each character that you've previously increased a mark, allowing you to increase those traits again later. At level 8, you gain a 5th experience and another bonus to your proficiency. Then it's talking about choosing advancements. You're going to look at your cards. Every single character is going to be different. If you look to your cards and your character sheets, it's going to explain those things. It talks about how to raise the damage thresholds. Gets into your weapon statistics. So equipping, storing, and switching equipment. Basically, you pick out your weapons at the beginning. Later on, you want a different weapon. The DM determines the appropriate cost for that weapon, and you can trade in your old one and take a new. But when you start, you're going to get a primary weapon and a secondary weapon.
Okay.
That's it. Later on, you may be able to earn another one. You can't really carry too much stuff.
Right.
Like you have a backpack, and it's mostly full.
Does it have a weight, or is it just kind of loose?
Nah, it's loose, like whether your backpack is full or not. You can also throw weapons, even if they're not a throwing weapon.
Would you have any kind of advantage on, like, say you have a throwing knife?
Well, it
would
says...
that be better than throwing your broadsword?
Well, here's the thing. It says, when you're using a weapon that you could theoretically throw, such as a dagger or an axe, you could throw it at a target within very close range. Here's the thing. You could technically throw anything. So it leaves it very open to how it's
I
interpreted.
feel like
by
Jared's
the
going to
GM.
throw me at least
Yeah.
once.
I throw what
I
you
mean,
got.
I feel like if you're creative enough, you can throw just about anything, and if you approve, then why not?
I mean, if you can do it in real life, why couldn't you do it in a game? That's my
Again,
philosophy.
Jared could easily throw me.
Improvised weapon.
So
That is Jake.
if you take a broadsword, the trait that it uses is agility for your attacks. The range of it is melee. The damage is D8 physical, because you have physical damage and magical damage, and then you just have straight damage,
Yeah.
right? So straight damage would be like, you were poisoned. It's not physical, it's not magical, it's just straight up damage. But physical damage would be like, I just slapped you with this broadsword. I wouldn't cut you with it because you're a nice person. So I slapped you with it. But if I'm at level 1, I have 1d8. But if I'm at tier 2, I have 2d8.
I see.
Tier 3, I have 3. Tier 4, I have 4d8.
Ouch.
So the next thing you would look at is the burden. It's a one-handed weapon, so I can do something with the other hand.
Okay, cool.
And then the feature, it's reliable, so it gets +1 to attack rolls, right?
That's nice.
So every weapon has a name, a trait, a range, the damage it does, the damage type, its burden, and a feature that comes with it. So for arrows and ammunition, you just assume you have it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I like that.
That's nice.
And here's the thing is, like, if you're in a really heated firefight, a GM could say you're running low on ammunition.
It's up to GM's just
But it's more about the story and less about a raw physical mechanical number. Okay, so using armor. Armor is kind of simple too. It's name, base score, base threshold, features. So chainmail armor has base thresholds of 7 and 15, like the numbers I used earlier, right? It has a base score of 4, and then a feature of heavy, which gives -1 to your evasion. So, an armor's base score represents the short-term protection it provides and how many armor slots you can mark before any bonuses and other features. So if an armor's base score is 4, you have 4 available armor slots that you can mark. And as it's so your character's armor score with all bonuses included cannot exceed 12. And what happens is as it's damaged, it can go down more and it reaches 0 and it's destroyed.
Yep.
And armor's base damage thresholds are the long-term protection that it provides. So on chainmail, it's 7 and 15. So I would need, if I hit at all, that's 1 hit point. But if I pass a 7 on the damage, then it's going to be 2. If I pass to 15, it's not. It's
kind of like Minecraft. I'm not gonna lie, where it's like, okay, you have this set of armor. You know, if you have better armor, say you have diamond armor on, you know, it lasts longer, it's tougher, stuff like that. And then you have like leather armor where it's like, okay, it doesn't last as long, you know, and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool. And then, you know, you do a bunch of combat and it wears down and eventually it breaks. You have to make a new one. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So if you look at, I'll give a couple examples of weapons. I won't go through all of them. So if we look at a longbow, the trait used to fire a longbow is agility. The range is very far, so it could hit up to 300 feet away. The damage is a D8 plus 3 physical. So whatever your tier is, that many dice of D8s plus 3 physical. But it is a two-handed weapon. It requires both hands. You can't do something else with your hands. And it's cumbersome, so you would get -1 to your finesse. So if you had to punch somebody, you could let go of it. You couldn't fire it, but you could punch somebody, but you'd get -1 to the finesse. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then we'll look at a warhammer. It uses strength. Its range is melee, but its damage is a D12 plus 3 physical. It's two-handed and heavy, so you get -1 to your evasion. If we look at tier 1 magic weapons, so your magic classes get magic weapons instead of physical weapons. Yeah. So if we look at the returning blade, it is a finesse weapon. It is for close range. It's a D8 magic damage, but it's one-handed, so you can keep your other hand free for spells. And it's returning. If you throw it, it immediately appears in your hand after the attack.
Cool. Nice.
So you have tier 2 weapons, you have tier 3 weapons, you have tier 4 weapons, and then you get into the combat wheelchair.
Exciting. I'm ready.
There are light frame, heavy frame, and arcane frame models.
Arcane frame, huh?
Yeah. So they're either based in agility, strength, or your spellcasting stat.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. A customizable wheelchairs.
Yeah, so the light frame, they have the quick feature. So when you make an attack, you can mark a stress to target another creature within range. The heavy frames, they allow you to do a lot more damage, like a D12 plus 12 physical. You're just going to run into them with your wheelchair, but it's -1 to evasion. Okay. It takes 2 hands to operate, where the light frame only takes 1 hand to operate. And the magic ones, too.
I kind of want to play a character with a wheelchair, not gonna lie.
The magic wheelchair sounds kind of cool, I'm not gonna lie.
Then you have secondary weapons, because you get a primary and a secondary, and they each have their own attributes as well, right? Then you get into armor. So let's look at a couple pieces of armor. At tier 1, there are only 4 kinds of armor. Gambeson armor, leather armor, chainmail, and full plate, right? Gambeson is, thresholds are 5 to 11, leather is 6 and 13, chainmail is 7 and 15, and full plate is 8 and 17. The base scores for Gambeson and leather are 3, and for chainmail and full plate are 4. Gambeson is flexible, so you get +1 to evasion.
Cool.
Chainmail is -1 to evasion, and full plate is -2 to evasion and -1 to agility. Ooh. So you pay for that extra protection.
Yeah.
It gets into loot. There's actually a table where you can find loot.
Show her
Right?
Okay.
Examples of loot, you could find a premium bedroll, which allows you to automatically clear a stress during downtime.
That's cool.
You could get a piper whistle that is a handcrafted whistle that makes a distinctive sound, and when you blow it, its piercing tone can be heard for a mile.
Call your party back.
Or there is a skeleton key. When you use it to open a locked door, you gain advantage on the finesse roll.
Cool.
You could roll an infinite bag. When you store items in this bag, they are kept in a pocket dimension that never runs out of space, and you can retrieve them at any time.
That sounds familiar.
Yep.
Legally distinct bag?
Yeah,
Yes.
the legally distinct magic bag. And then you have consumable items. So you have different types of potions and musks
Bag
and
of
things.
holding,
So the
holding
ogre
the
musk,
bag.
you can use the musk to prevent anyone from tracking you by mundane or magical means until your next rest. It's like, putting fox urine on a trail.
Makes sense.
You can get a charm potion that you drink that you gain +1 bonus to your next presence roll. Or you could find morphing clay and spend a hope to use the clay, altering your face enough to make you unrecognizable till your next rest. Like sculpting your own mask, right? It has a section about examples of play, which is kind of cool. And then there's a whole section about running your adventures. I am a very experienced DM. I've read through this. I did read the book 4 times before we discussed this. And I can say that this is pretty thorough and good enough for a beginner GM to read this and get an idea of what they're doing, even if you've never done it. So I do think that the beginner GM friendliness is pretty high in this.
Yeah.
Which is that is something that I can say, hey, that's really great. And then it talks about the pitfalls to avoid, which is also good for both beginner and experienced DMs. And things it says not to do: undermining the heroes, always telling the players what to roll, letting the scenes drag out, singular solutions, railroading people, over planning. That's what we were talking about earlier. I don't over plan.
Right.
And hoarding fear. Don't hoard your fear tokens. Just use them. Don't hoard your fear tokens. Use them constantly. Every time they take a rest, you're getting 6 more. Just use them over and over and over. And then it talks about all of the core GM mechanics. Is basically how to do it. Every time you want to act, that's called making a move. It says how to make a move. And the moves that you can choose.
I would like to point out the GM moves on the paper are they roll with fear on an extra roll, they fail an extra roll, they do something that would have consequences, they give you a golden opportunity, and they look to you for what happens next, which is very loose, and I think some of those are kind of
Give
funny.
me some expanded ones. One of the things that says make a move the characters don't see. Something could be happening behind the scenes that you don't know about.
Yep, the guy that you don't see hiding in the tree line.
Yeah.
He just reported
Tabletop.
back to the enemy. You know,
One of the
something
things
like
that could happen, though, is I could take away an opportunity permanently. For example, the 3 times that you guys missed the antidote in Battletech.
Okay, we don't have to talk about that. Okay,
And I gave them the opportunity.
she uncovered a child.
Yeah, that was terrible, wasn't it?
We put on a good show.
I make good.
We
Then
did.
it has a
Ending
whole-
was great.
It has a whole section about fear and how to use it, example scenes and how much fear you should spend in a scene. It talks about how to set the difficulty rolls. So a 5 is a very easy roll. 10 is easy, 15 is average, 20 is hard, 25 is very hard, and 30 is nearly impossible.
But not totally impossible.
Not totally impossible.
What
In
is
most
the
situations, you would have to roll 2 12s to hit a 30.
Yeah.
Not 2 of anything, 'cause that's like a critical success.
A critical success, here's the thing, is some things are just impossible. And though it's not like explicit about that, the way it describes it, like, I'll use an example. If you want to intimidate a shopkeeper to lower the prices,
Yeah.
you might succeed, but you'll probably get the cops called on you, or you'll
It's
earn a
up
bad
to GM's
reputation.
discretion on
Right.
that.
But if you want to intimidate a doorknob into that door opening, I don't care that you got a crit. You can't intimidate a doorknob unless it's alive. You see what I'm saying?
Of
Watch
course.
me.
I'll watch you scream at a doorknob until you're blue in the face and nothing's going to happen, no matter how many crits you roll.
Sesame.
Does that make sense, though?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it did it.
it really leans on that, is that there are times that the crit didn't matter, right? But what will happen if you rolled a crit, even if a thing's impossible, you have this realization, I can't really intimidate a doorknob. But you know what? I realize the difference between fantasy and reality, and I'm going to be less fooled by illusory doors in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it talks about how to
I
set...
got it from the beginning. I'm just difficult.
It talks about how to set the rolls for different types of, like your agility rolls, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge.
Yep.
How to set the difficulty. And then it talks about when to give advantage and disadvantage. So let's say you're attempting something that situationally is just bad,
Yeah.
and you have never dealt with anything like that before. I could just tell you you're going to use disadvantage because this is way out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Could be something you've never done before, but it's similar to something else you have done that you're really good at, and I'll give you advantage for it. However, under normal circumstances, you're going to have to spend hope to get that advantage, and I'm going to have to spend fear to force that disadvantage.
Yep.
Okay.
So context clues are definitely at play here. There are countdowns sometimes during the game. If you're tracking progress, let's say in 12 turns, the ship blows up. We set a timer there, and every round we tick it down, and when it gets to 1, boom.
Right.
It actually talks about how to use countdown features, and that's not the only example. There's lots of times that you may want to count down something within the game.
Like a chase.
Yes.
Or how long a spell is sustained.
Yeah.
Yes. And then it gets into gold, equipment, and loot. So meals for a party of adventurer for the night is a handful of gold. But a luxury inn room for a night is a bag of gold. But you can fit multiple people in that one room. Or if you want to purchase tier 4 equipment, that's 1 to 2 chests of gold, right? Running GM NPCs, this is pretty straightforward stuff that if you're just going to be a player, you don't need to worry about that. This is really telling you how to manage running an NPC. I would say that the difficulty of GMing is average. In some ways, it's easier. They have really tried to make this beginner GM friendly. However, the looseness of the NPCs can create some difficulties. You want to take the time to prep ahead of time and know all of the stats for everything that you might run into. Because there's not a monster manual. There are some monsters in here, but it's more of this is the concept. You decide what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to want to do that ahead of time if you're a
Yeah, I
GM.
can see how that would be
Yeah,
difficult
it's-
to do on the spot.
Yeah.
It's that very loose and that it can be intimidating to some people. Whereas like some people really enjoy that, like having this very distinct. This is the rules. This is
Here's what you're encountering.
This is
here's
what you're
else
looking
it
at,
has,
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like it's already hard enough trying to account for what your players' characters might do. Also having to adjust encounters to make sure they're balanced can be hard
I
for
agree.
somebody
Yeah.
starting out.
But I will say, what I think that's also a strength, though, because it means that when you are in a scene and you start to see that something is kind of like shaping out to be one way, you can go, okay, well, I can adjust, the next thing.
And if it's
Or-
dragging on forever, you
Yeah.
adjust it a bit.
So here's a cool thing where it talks about session 0 and safety tools, right? So in your session 0, they recommend something called CATS. CATS is short for concept, aim, tone, and subject. So the general concept of what you want to play, that's the concept. The aim is these are the goals, the direction we want the campaign to move, right? And then the tone is, do we want this to be happy? Do we want this to be dark?
Right.
Do we want this to be focused on madness? Do we want this to be focused on sickness? Do we want this to be focused on...
Heroism or...
Right. And then the subject, these are subjects that you want to avoid, right? Very specific things that bother, because some people will have triggers that they can't really help.
Right.
Some people find certain things distasteful. And then with that, they talk about lines and veils. A veil is this is kind of, it makes me uncomfortable. And a line is, this is a hard no for me, right?
Yep.
Then they talk about using an X card, taking a card with an X on it. And anytime someone can like tap on that and roll back a situation, that it's not really not working with somebody.
Yeah.
Now, I have seen players try to abuse that kind of system in the past, where their character got killed or something bad happened that they didn't like, and they'd say, I don't like that. That's triggering to me. No, you discuss those ahead of time.
Yeah.
And if it isn't discussed...
That is a player thing, not a character thing at all.
Yes. It's 100% a player thing, not a character thing. Whatever happens to your character happens.
Right. Know your players.
If you have a trigger ahead of time, if there's a subject you need to avoid, bring that up ahead of time.
Yep,
And
that's a session 0 kind of conversation.
Absolutely. Personally, I prefer the yellow card, red card way. It's if something's making you uncomfortable, just hold up the yellow card and we'll change tone. If something is real close to triggering, red card, let's dial it back and go a different direction.
Yeah.
Right? So like, personally, I struggle with things that deal with autonomy, right? Like that's actually kind of triggering to me from some of my own background. And when I play in games where there is a risk of the loss of autonomy in a character,
Such as possessions.
yeah, such as possession, one of the things that's really careful, because like I have played with DMs who can manage that well, and when I've run campaigns that include possession, the way I would address that is I would say, okay, so your character failed this roll and is possessed. Let me tell you what that means. You can decide how this is interpreted. You are in control of your character. Your character's thought processes have changed in this way temporarily, right? So it doesn't remove the player agency, but that removal of player agency is actually kind of triggering to me. And that's one of the times I will red card. And I discuss those things in session 1. Like, I cannot, like, most games that include possession, I just won't play because it's the loss of autonomy is triggering to me. Now, if a DM can handle that well and is willing for, if it is triggering to a red card, cool, I'll play it. So it's the same way with other people. Some people may have a trigger associated with spiders. Let's say you have arachnophobia and the campaign calls for spiders to show up. You could yellow card, that's making me a little uncomfortable. And lets the DM know, okay, I'm gonna less descriptions of spiders, no pictures of spiders. It's just, this is the bite, this is the web, right? But if it's becoming too much, that's where you'd red card, just skip the encounter.
Yeah.
Do something else. Talk about it, resolve it,
It
and
should
move
not
on.
be an issue with
They're
your
worms
DM
now.
either.
Yeah.
They're giant worms.
Yeah, and if it's pertinent to your story, I get that, but that's the kind of thing you should discuss at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, so it talks about how to deal with that. They do recommend the X card. I personally prefer yellow and red cards, but when we play, these are my friends, so we all know each
Reluctantly.
other's triggers pretty well, and
Yeah, for each other.
we generally don't touch them like ever. So, all right. So moving on, this talks about how to build a session 0. Not going to dive into that because that's for DMs, GMs. Running a session, it talks about thinking in beats and how to do it, like keeping a rhythm to the session, how to use conflict to keep people interested, different types of it, how to use downtime, how to level your party, how to build a campaign, how to plan a story arc. All this is in here, and there's a lot, and that's not going to be pertinent to a player. Chapter 4, though, gets into adversaries and environments, and it describes how to effectively use an environment against the players and to propel the story, and to throw the adversaries into it. So you have different types of adversaries. They are bruisers, which are tough and deliver powerful attacks. Hordes, which are groups of identical creatures acting together as a single unit. Leaders, which command and summon other adversaries. Minions, which are easily dispatched but dangerous in numbers. Ranged, which are fragile in close encounters but can attack at distance for high damage. Skulks, which maneuver and exploit opportunities to ambush opponents. Socials, which present unique challenges to overcome through conversation rather than combat. Solos, which are formidable challenges to the whole party with or without support. Standards, which are rank and file adversaries. And then supports, which enhance their allies and disrupt their opponents. And when you see a stat block for an adversary, it's going to say which type they are, right? And the adversaries can also have experiences. There's a section here about how to choose the adversaries. The description that goes into greater detail. So under Bruisers, they have two examples, the Minotaur Wrecker and the Dire Wight. Under Horde, they have the Zombie Pack and the Covetous Miners. Or if we go on over to Solo, we have a Malefacted Giant or a Juvenile Flickerfly. You could run into really bad things, you know. Support characters could be a Cult Adept or a Forest Druid. And then it has how to improvise your adversaries. There's a little chart for it. It does make it easier to pull an adversary out, but then it gives you a list of sample adversaries that you can use, things that you could run into, and it actually lists them by tier. There's a lot more tier 1 than there are anything else. And then it has stat blocks for all of them.
Okay.
Divided by tier. So that makes it really easy if you are new to GMing. A lot of player handbooks will include monsters. That's what these are. These are the adversaries for the game. So skipping past those, because I don't want to give too much away, it gets into environments. And environments have their own stat blocks. So they will have features, multiple features per environment. So if the environment is ambushers, it's a tier 1 event. An ambush is set by the PCs to catch unsuspecting adversaries off guard. The impulses that they can encounter are escape, group up, protect the most vulnerable. And then the features are, there's a reaction and there's a relative strength. And it goes into how to use those things to make it work. Skipping past those, we have campaign settings. And this part I like. The first one that's in it, and you can build your own. And it talks about how to build your own.
Yep.
These are just examples. So the Wither Wild is sort of somewhere between the Feywild and, you know, the shadowy plane of existence. If you look a little farther in here, there's it talks about all the things that would exist in the Wither Wild and how to play a campaign in the Wither Wild. There's another one called Five Banners Burning, which is all about warfare. You're in the middle of a war. There is another one called Beast Feast, and this one is honestly more of your standard dungeon crawl. We're hunting monsters. Then there's another one that is the future tech stuff I was talking about. Before that, it's Age of Umbra. So it's the dying world immersed in relentless shadow and nightmarish monsters.
There's the Shadow Realm.
Yeah, that's your Shadow Realm.
Grimdark.
Mm-hmm. The next one then is the Motherboard. That is the future tech one. Mm-hmm. And then you go a little bit farther. I think there was 2 more, if I remember correctly. It tells you how to run it. Colossus of the Drylands, which is essentially like kaiju. You're fighting epic monsters. And then the last one.
This is the high fantasy one.
Wouldn't you like to know? Nope, that was it. And then it has your domain card reference. So everything that's on the domain cards is in here. Right?
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And if you get online, you can download these and print off your own cards. If you can't afford to buy them or don't have access to them, they make this very easy to access. Then in the back, you have the character sheet. Character sheets can be downloaded for free on the website. On the character sheet, you see there's evasion, there's armor, there's the slots for the armor, agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge, your level. Here's where you put your hit points and your stress. This is where you mark your hope tokens, or you can place a token there, sort of a physical one. Yes.
May I say that real quick? The under each of the each of your character traits,
It gives a description.
lists, it lists. So under instinct, you have perceive, sense, and navigate under presence of charm, perform, deceive, which I think makes it really easy to do your kind of checks and everything, that you don't have to like be like, okay, what would that be
Yeah,
under
hunting
again?
down
There's not a
Right
specific
there.
skill list.
Right.
And these are what I described earlier. Each one has a couple options, but they are not the
Right.
be all end all. These aren't the only things that you
Right.
can do.
I think that's pretty cool.
And if you want to do something and you like, I want to use this die to roll to do it, but if I'm like, well, it would, like, you're trying to use instinct to charm somebody,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, presence is probably more applicable. But if you could make a really good case for
It's GM.
how, it is GM discretion.
Yep.
And then it has this here, which is called, you slide this to the left of your character sheet. These, you fold your character sheet down the middle, and you can literally just fold it over and quick access the second set of things. It's called the
Character sheet
sidecar. Yeah.
Yep.
So if you look on here, it looks like this. So the back of the page, this side is empty, this side has notes and stuff. So you can literally just fold it over and write the other stuff you need right there. Right? And then, almost done, it has a section about character creation and a player guide, just like what you have in there.
That's what we have in our hands right now. There's the play guide, and there's the, I think before that was character.
So that's the free download online, and it comes with these pages already.
Yep.
Neat.
And if you look here, the GM guide, that's your top page, is actually right here as
Yep.
well. It has a list of the equipment in the back. So,
So
quick
this
references.
looks like their answer to having like
OGL.
a game master book out, but not a player handbook. This is the
Right.
player handbook.
Well, I think because this is both books at once,
Yeah.
unlike say D&D where you have the DM guide and the
Monster manual and all
monster
that.
manual. It's all of those 3 books in one. I think it's more of an answer to kind of like with D&D with the open game license, right? That was kind of one of the big sticking points more recently with D&D about people having certain problems. And so that's kind of their answer to that, where it's like, hey, here's our free content, our open gaming thing. Here's our answer to that.
And
so
the fact that
there's
everything
enough
can be
there.
found easily online
Yes.
is great.
And in the back, they have maps of
cool.
the world that they've
Oh, I love
created
that.
that you can use. You do not have to use.
Yep.
And these are actually specific to the different settings that
Each
they've
different
made.
setting. Yep. That's pretty cool.
And then there's an index that makes everything easy to find in the back. So now that we've gone through the book, I'm going to show you the cards. Because when you buy the core set, it comes with the book and the cards. So, turning that back where everybody can see it. Actually, here.
Yeah.
Put that underneath it so people can see this beautiful book. All right. Now, I've gone through these a couple times and they've got kind of knocked around. So I'm going to start with these. This is the communities on the front there. Hold on.
Okay.
So these are your communities. These are your ancestry. And then these are essentially the
This is
the
like
level
domain.
1 of your classes.
And it very
right?
easily says it just right on the cards. It says community. It
Yeah.
says ancestry. Very easy to distinguish if they get mixed up.
So you can see the symbol for both things that you can be, right? These are your
The
two
different
domains. So when you go through this, you know, like
So if
you've
you wanna
got the bard
randomize it-
wordsmith, but then you also have the bard troubadour.
Oh, okay.
And you see these both have the same thing on them.
Yep.
That this one has a different set of abilities than this one has.
That's the subclasses.
Yep. And then these cards are your races, like the fungrel, the dwarf, and it will say on there, I don't know if you can zoom in and look at it, it actually will tell you the bonuses that you get for the ancestry. So let's pick a random one. Let's take a ribbit, right?
I like the ribbon.
So the ribbit, it says, ribbits resemble anthropomorphic frogs with protruding eyes and webbed hands and feet. They are amphibious, so they can breathe and move naturally underwater, and they have a long tongue. You can use your long tongue to grab onto things within close range. Mark a stress to your tongue as a finesse close weapon that deals D12 physical damage using your proficiency. So it's stressful to use your tongue. but you can do it. So we have ancestry, we have community. I will grab the Orderborn, right? So the Orderborn says, being part of an Orderborn community means you're from a collective that focuses on discipline or faith, and you uphold a set of principles that reflect your experience there. The feature is dedicated. Record 3 sayings or values your upbringing instilled in you. Once per rest, when you describe how you're embodying one of these 3 principles through your current action, you can roll a d20 as your hope die.
Wow.
Yeah. So there are other dice than the d12.
I noticed.
And then after those, if we look at the cards for your domain, I actually have these divided up because they're divided by levels 1, 2, 3, so on. So taking all of the level 1s out, I'm going to just set that aside for a moment. If we look first at these 2 domains, we have the grimoires. So if we look at these here, right? These domains, all 3 of these are available to the School of Knowledge because it has this symbol. If you look there, that symbol there matches these 3. So these 3 grimoires are one of the domains that you could pick, right? Well, the domain matches. So you could pick one of these 3 things, not all 3. So let's say, take the Book of Ava, right? So you are a wizard who has the Book of Ava. So with that, you would get the ability, it's a spell, Power Push. Make a spellcasting roll against a target within melee range. On a success, they're knocked back to far range, and they take d10 plus 2 magic damage using your proficiency. Or you can have Teva's Armor. Spend a hope to give a target you can touch a +1 bonus to their armor score until their next rest, or you cast Teva's Armor again. Or you can cast Ice Spike. Make a spellcast roll of a 12 to summon a large a large ice spike within far range. If you use it as a weapon, make a spellcasting roll against the target's difficulty instead. On a success, deal d6 physical damage using your proficiency. So if you're using it in combat, you need to roll a 12. But if you are just doing it situationally and you want to call down ice, the DM could waive that. Say, okay, cool, it happens. And that's pretty simple of how this is put together. I think that short of seeing the game played, not going to really get any more detail than what we've got. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. But now I want to take some questions from you guys.
I definitely spoke my heart during this.
All right, so questions?
I think we explained everything really well, honestly. I love the mechanics of it.
Yeah?
The Dragon Prince campaign.
Yeah.
So as I do generally, this is a fair, unbiased look at the game, and I will give something I really like, something I like, something I dislike, something I really don't like, right? We're going to start with something I really like. I really like the narrative aspect of this, the customizability, the open-endedness to it.
Yeah.
I feel that
Agreed.
I feel that I could tell any kind of story that I want with this, and as a seasoned
Customize
DM,
your NPCs, all kinds of stuff like that.
yeah, I think that they created enough core content that you don't feel railroaded, even though you have to pick from their options. And not feeling railroaded is a really important thing to me. Something that I like. I do like the inclusiveness and the way that they try to help manage player comfort and DM comfort, that they do want to be inclusive. Excuse me. I like how they do cater as best they can to everyone without trying like going overboard with it.
I thought that the wheelchair thing was really cool. I thought that was a cool mechanic that didn't feel...
Yeah, that's something that you don't see a lot
Yeah.
of. There's only a couple of systems I've seen
Right.
where there are mobility devices you can attack with.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So for things that I disliked, I don't personally like the overmanagement of resources, but I think that sometimes it does call for a little more crunch if people are abusing something.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really dive into how to deal with problematic players per se. But I don't know that you could really get that out of a book like this anyway. The thing that I really dislike, now, it's another side of the coin of what I actually like. Because a lot of people that watch this don't know that I'm Native American. I am a Cherokee tribal citizen. And I say that because a lot of times when I see Native Americans appear in games, or I see players try to play a Native American, they will play with some really harmful tropes. The idea of the noble savage is actually kind of disingenuous. People are people, and any time that you are not part of a minority group and you play a part of that minority group, there's a very significant risk that you're going to fall into harmful tropes. And it can be offensive, but it can also be like if you weren't born blind and you
I was about to
play
say
a blind
similar
character,
to...
like I don't have a problem
That
if you're born blind playing a blind character, right?
Yeah.
But if you've never used a wheelchair, okay, it's fine. I guess playing one, but don't. I don't know.
You
It
have to be
doesn't sit
careful
well
with
with
it,
me.
yeah.
You got to be careful when you play as marginalized people.
It runs a risk of appropriation
Absolutely.
and insensitivity.
And while it is nice to be inclusive, it's something that you just have to be careful with, you know?
Yeah. So while those things are in there and meant to be inclusive, the thing that I dislike is I don't feel that it goes quite far enough into be careful that you don't go off in this other ditch.
Yeah.
And
Making
but-
your entire character personality about being blind would be a bit...
right, because
much.
people who are actually a thing, like if I'm going to play a Native American in a game, I'm just going to play myself. You know,
Right.
I'm not running around in a loincloth like hooting and hollering.
Right.
I'm a normal person.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that, you know, if I wanted to play one of my ancestors in a game, you know, I could do so, but like so like one of my grandparents was the first conductor of the Trail of Tears. And if you as part of your character are like, oh yeah, so like I endured this hardship where I was, you know, a victim of genocide and ejected from my land and all, like, how are you going to role play that if you don't actually understand that without being insensitive to the people, you know?
Yeah.
If you've never been blind, playing a blind character without being insensitive to what it's actually like, or deaf, or anything of that nature, disability, and being born Native American is not a disability.
Right.
I'm
Or,
just saying
you know,
any
being in a
marginalized
wheelchair and
community.
just all you're doing is running around hitting people with your wheelchair, you know, is...
It runs a risk of harmful tropes. That's
Yeah.
my problem. That's my dislike. So as long as you know your table, you know your friends, it's a game.
Yeah.
Play it how you want. And I'm not disparaging it by any means. It's just trying to give a like, dislike, so you have a very fair, balanced, objective view of the game.
Right. Unbiased.
And if my biggest complaint is, hey guys, don't abuse this cool thing,
Yeah.
then it's not really much of a complaint.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So with that, this is Daggerheart, and this is the core set. You will be able to see us playing it starting, I believe it's next Saturday is the first episode will come out. We might release the session 0 before then. Not quite sure whether we're going to. We'll figure that out. But thank you very much for joining us here with our whole crew from RPGallery. But I'm James.
I'm Jade.
This has been
Tabletop Scholar.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.